Welcome to another edition of What's So Funny, the show that probes the minds, the brains, the psyches of the people who make the funny. Tonight, a man who spent his youth teaching Bill Hicks everything he knows. We've got Portland-based comic Dwight Slade with us for the next hour. So sit back, take your feet off, and enjoy. Dwight, thanks for doing the show. It's not the first time that we've tried, and hopefully this one will work.
Technology will be at our backs, and we will have full sail ahead, Guy. Hey, Guy. Hey.
Hey.
I like your name is Guy because I frequently, if you forget someone's name, which I do frequently, I just go, hey, Guy. But now if I forget your name, it's like, okay, Guy, thanks a lot. And you're like, gosh, he's on a first-name basis. He cares.
That's not good if you're on the receiving end of that. Because I've been in stores, people go, hey, Guy, and I don't want to be rude. And so I will speak to them, trying to recall, how do I know them? How do I know them? Mm-hmm. 5 minutes later, I'm just polite, act neutral. Then I hear them walk away and go to somebody else. Hey, Guy.
Can you imagine
I don't know them.
Can you imagine your name was Buddy? Also, it'd be horrible. Hey, Buddy. Where do I know you from?
There's a musician named Buddy Guy. That would be the worst. Yeah, we tried 2 or 3 years ago in Montreal, I think it was, to do an interview, set up there, and you came over to my table, and then the equipment malfunctioned.
Well, yeah, and I think that the important thing that people should get from that is that you are powerful enough to command a table at Just for Laughs. Actual furnishings can go in your direction. Well, I worked up. Earlier I had a side table, then I had a headboard, but now I have a full table at Just for Laughs. Pretty soon I'll have a furnished small IKEA apartment.
And now I have the front desk at Yuck Yucks. You've been at the stand-up game a long time. We're about the same age, I think. Do you still?
Sounds like we're starting an intervention here.
Did you ever...
When are you going to give this up, Dwight? Seriously.
No, did you still or did you ever enjoy traveling all over, spinning yarns? Because if that's what you got to, you travel the continent, you travel the world.
Suddenly I'm a Scottish storyteller. Hey, yeah, come on and let me tell you. I realize I love traveling, and I've always tried to figure out whether I love traveling because I have this outgoing, pioneering spirit, and I like to absorb cultures and ideas and new things, or do I have this innate fear of settling down and because my family moved around a lot as a kid, and after 2 years in one place, I always get this antsy feeling like I gotta get rid of these people, I gotta get rid of my home, I gotta go, I gotta pull up, I gotta get out of here. So I still enjoy it, and I think as you grow older, you have to reorient how it fits into your life.
Well, you've been in Portland for a long time, haven't you?
I've been in Portland, Oregon for many years. 20 some years.
Yeah. So that's why, I guess, because you did move around a lot, like all over. Was your dad a fugitive or in the military?
Well, close. He worked for Shell Oil, okay. And which is like the military. In fact, I think we've all seen the connection between oil and the military. And he did get transferred quite a bit. Whenever I made friends, his boss would call him in and say, we can't have your child having a sustainable foundation of life. We're going to transfer you to Houston. So, yeah, I moved around quite a bit as a kid.
Where was the longest you ever spent as a child?
Well, I was in Connecticut for 4 years, and then 2 years in Marietta, Georgia, and then 5 years in Houston, Texas, 2 years in California, 2 years in Seattle, Washington. So, I have very fond memories of the East Coast of New England, being in Wilton, Connecticut, and then I have very fond memories of the South, of being in Marietta and Houston.
So when you travel around in your stand-up career, you have many hometowns. They're welcoming back Dwight Slade, hometown, local boy.
Well, that and the fact I have illegitimate children scattered from here to the United Kingdom, yes, every place it seems like home or a place I need to avoid.
So on the road as a professional stand-up, how many years have you been doing it?
A lot.
Okay,
We'd have to have numbers, but I think in '85 is when I turned professional, and I had no other source of income than yarn telling, as you say.
As I so poetically put it.
Yes.
And has it taken its toll, this travel?
Certainly.
Yeah?
Certainly.
How
I'm
so?
divorced. I think that's one key indication. But yeah, it takes a toll. Everybody's job takes a toll in their life. That's why I've forgiven myself a little bit for any of the wreckage that I've accumulated both in my personal and professional life, that everyone's job is hard and you have to balance it. And but I don't think any more than anyone else's. Certainly my own father had to deal with his issues of working and pulling up his family and moving to different locales, but you deal with it.
I read when you started your family, you actually brought them with you in a RV or something like that?
Well, yeah, because the question was, how do you maintain a family life with a new baby and also work the road as a traveling comic? And it became a survival issue of like, well, I don't have any skills. I have a college degree that is useless.
What was it in?
General science. I got a science degree, which is the first step to being a science teacher, which is something I wanted to avoid at all costs. But I just wanted to get the degree and get out.
Right.
I had a gig that night. Give me the degree. I got to go to, wherever. And so we decided to buy, or actually I decided, and my ex was complacent. Are you sure? Yes, this is what we're doing. We bought a travel trailer and lived in the travel trailer for 4 years, touring North America. My first gig actually was in Canada. My daughter was 18 months, no, not 18 months, was a month and a half old, wow. 18 weeks.
Right.
And we left Oregon and went to Edmonton. That was the first gig, was in Edmonton in this brand new trailer. And then we went Edmonton, Calgary, Saskatoon, just basically the dream tour with a brand new family.
Not in the winter, I hope.
No, we had winter disasters, and the thing is the trailer was a major pain in the ass. There was so much misery attached with it, leaks, and furnaces that wouldn't work in February, and we're freezing. And I have this new baby, and it literally is getting close to 42 degrees in the trailer, and I'm worried about the safety and life of my child. It was a challenge, but also I got to see my daughter taking her first steps. I saw my daughter swim for the first time. It was in a pool.
In a flood.
And and so there was advantages and disadvantages. And overall, it was an amazingly unique experience that I wouldn't trade for anything. My ex probably would argue with that. She was terrified the entire time, and she probably now uses it as fodder for her. To verify why she wants to stay in one house for the rest of her existence.
So. Right. But 4 years, I can't imagine. All that driving. Are you a good driver?
Learn to be.
Yeah.
But,
not when you're listening to classic rock stations.
Yes. If people want to come out and see the show, you'll understand why.
Yes. So that's, and you hear this from a lot of comics that, realize they want to get off the road when they call home and they hear, oh, our baby just took his first steps.
Yeah.
And you miss that. Right?
Exactly. And it was really a solution, and it just added a lot more drama to my life and my ex's life that I think that she would have rather avoided. Mm-hmm. But, overall, it was an odd feeling. I would do a show and like 2 shows on a Saturday, I would come home in some town, Lansing, Michigan, or Des Moines, Iowa, or Regina, or wherever it was, and I would be home. I would open the door, shut it, and it would be quiet, and I would hear the hum of the refrigerator, and I would, and all my stuff is there, baseball cards in my wardrobe, and it was absolutely home. And it was odd to have that in these very sterile, odd environments that you're working in, but you had this really sense of home, food in the refrigerator, snacks, television, VCR. It was just, and your wife and baby are in the bedroom, and it was just a very unique experience to be able to take that wherever you went.
Not always packing every weekend to go away.
Yeah, very.
Pros and cons, I guess.
Exactly.
So now, stand-up over the years since the mid-'80s is, ebbed and flowed, and I think right now it seems to be a glut of it. It's everywhere. It's, I guess with the internet and with all these shows on TV, as there were in the early or during the boom of whenever that was, Evening at the Improv and all that. So how has it changed otherwise over the years in either content or quality or whatever else you want to take that?
Well, and it's interesting because right now in this time, this is a fascinating time in stand-up, and in my opinion, because certainly from a perspective, is that the profile of stand-up has been raised now, and it's because I think the audience is growing older, that it's no longer a new thing. Everybody in entertainment right now has grown up with stand-up, whereas when I started in the 80s, most of the audience had just discovered it. It wasn't that it was around. It was a new thing, this modern era of stand-up.
The modern era, yes, because there's always been stand-up.
But like, for example, in the 80s and 90s, to count comics that you knew that were fairly household names, they were all known for being actors. Even Richard Pryor wasn't famous until he acted in movies. But certainly everyone else that was famous was because they were actors on television. Eddie Murphy was famous for being an actor. Roseanne Barr, Tim Allen, Ellen DeGeneres, Jerry Seinfeld. These all were people who were anonymous as stand-ups, but were famous after being on television.
Right, to the masses you're talking about.
Yes, to the masses. And now is the first time where comics are famous for being stand-ups. It's a very unique, singular time that I never thought I would see. Brian Regan has never had a sitcom, has never acted a lick in his life, has had limited exposure on television, but sells out concerts everywhere because he's a great stand-up.
Yeah.
And the same thing with Dave Attell. Well, he might be an exception because he got a lot of television exposure from his
Jim Gaffigan.
Jim Gaffigan, another guy is famous for being a stand-up. Dane Cook is most famous for being a stand-up, despite the fact he's been in 2 feature films.
Right. He's
known as a stand-up. And like even going to Kathleen Madigan, Alonzo Bowden, and they're famous for being stand-ups, and it's very gratifying. It raises the profile of stand-up comedy.
So it's not necessarily now a means to an end; it could be the end itself.
Bingo! You should do this. You should do something with this intelligence, because I was blabbering on for an hour, and you summed it up in
there you go
6 seconds.
But do you foresee another bust then, because it is so prevalent and it is everywhere?
It certainly is going to go through a transition, and I believe the transition now is that the advent of the internet is changing entertainment as we know it, and it's never going to go backwards. It will never go backwards. YouTube is not going to get less popular. People will not have less opportunity on the internet. There will not be less content that people are searching for on the internet. It's only in the opposite direction. And I've already seen the fact that someone like a comic like Jeff Dunham, who he's a ventriloquist, and he's kind of meandered along under the radar for many years. He's done Tonight shows, he's done Comedy Central specials. He's a very talented ventriloquist, probably the top of his game. But my brother came to me once and said, "Do you know who Jeff Dunham is?" I go, "Yeah." And he goes, "Well, have you seen this video that is being passed around that's on YouTube?" And it was of him with a, quote, terrorist puppet, doing a ventriloquist act with a terrorist puppet. And I watched it, and it was nothing real, in my opinion.
Yeah.
It was nothing really new that Jeff was doing. It was just happened to be a different puppet. And this video freaking blew up. And
no pun intended.
Yes. And it created all this heat for Jeff Dunham, and he has this legions of brand new fans that are only there because of this video that got passed around on YouTube. And it was just, it's one of those things where it's like a hit song, where if one of your bits, stand-up bits, suddenly gets passed around, you create fans and on the internet that you didn't have before. And stand-ups have to pay attention to that now, that I don't think they had to do previously.
And you're paying attention to it. Have you noticed people coming to your shows who discovered you through the internet?
Well, good question. I don't think I'm as internet savvy as I should be. I'm like medium. There's stuff available out there on me, and It's always odd. You'll go to, I have something on YouTube, and you'll go and you'll see 3,600 hits. It's like, really, 3,600 people, watched it, or you do a radio show, a national radio show in the States, and you'll look at your chart on your website, and the week that you're on, the day that you're on, it's Bob and Tom show, it'll be 52,000 hits on your website, and it will slowly go down the rest of the week. But 52,000 people, and it's like, that's a lot of people that are checking you out. And someone pointed out to me that if you can somehow, through the internet, get 50,000 fans that are fans of yours, either by merchandising, getting them video and content, and providing them with this entertainment source, that there's 50,000 people out there that will pay to see you. And if you can find 200 to 400 people in a city that will come see you, you can tour and have them come see you and pay $15, $20 for a ticket and do it once a year. Mm-hmm. And that's a fan base that you can make an excellent living on, and you don't need television. It's a phenomena that is unprecedented.
Well, I can't wait for you. I can't wait to find out from you how many hits you get after appearing on this show. It's going to skyrocket. We're talking with Dwight Slade. The show's What's So Funny. I'm Guy McPherson. Station CFRO 102.7 FM. Dwight is an American comic visiting our shores. As you said, you started really in Canada, kind of.
In many ways, yes.
In many ways, you're touring. But you did start as a young lad. What were you, like 13 or 14?
I think my first open mic was, 13, 14.
Yeah. Now, when you see younger comics now who may be 20, do you just go, what do you have to say? Like, how dare you tell us? or do you just look at everybody?
You don't know the old days.
Like, what were you saying at 13 that could
Oddly
appeal
enough,
to?
many of the same things I'm talking about now.
Oh, really?
It's
yeah.
very frightening how juvenile I am. But it was issues of, I've always been sort of the young man fighting against authority, so it was about school and parents.
Yeah.
And I think those are universal themes that will always, because everyone has school and parents, and so you can always make jokes about it. And also, we were doing characters. I was in a comedy team, so we were doing characters back and forth, and characters are timeless, so,
A lot of comics start out in comedy teams. A lot of comics that, George Carlin, Bob Newhart even started out in comedy teams. Did you know that? You're looking at me blankly.
I didn't know that.
Oh, there you go.
I did not know that.
How good were you at that age?
Well,
relatively speaking.
Well, as a comedy team, I do remember toward the end of, we were really doing very well. We were killing, as it was, in open mics and comedy. And it became where, this small group of open micers, it was in the 70s in Houston, Texas. When we went up, it was kind of like, well, these are the guys that always kill. And it was always kind of like, well, we were prepared to have the best set of the night. And if we didn't have the best set of the night, we were upset. So it was, and it was probably just raw, innocent, energy. It's just these two wild kids come up, and they're just so enthusiastic, and I would hope that we had funny material. And as I look back, it was funny. It was
that's interesting.
Very unusual.
Now, your partner was a fellow by the name of Bill Hicks. Whatever happened to him?
I don't know. I haven't heard. Maybe I'll read his biography.
I read it. Scream.
American Scream.
American Scream. I thought that should be the title for the Sam Kinison biography, but it was for Bill Hicks. Yeah, and so now, obviously, Bill Hicks, legendary, in case you're listening and you're going, who's Bill Hicks? But legendary comic. And at the time, did you have a straight man, funny man role? Which one were you?
We went up as if, initially we went up as brothers, and we talked about our parents and our life. And then then it was just basically going back and forth with jokes. We'd have jokes, and he would take one, I would take one, and then we'd go into characters where we'd banter back and forth. And sometimes the characters would switch. He'd be one character, I'd be another. So it was very, there was a great deal of equality in terms of the relationship of the stand-up, of the team.
And you were classmates or neighbors? How did you meet?
Yeah, we met playing touch football in Houston, Texas, and I remember just started joking around, and then I don't know how, I can't remember because it was grade 6 for God's sake, but at some point I mentioned that my ambition was to be an actor, and he mentioned that his ambition was to be a stand-up comic. And we were 13, and so he said, why don't we do stand-up together? And I thought, okay, well, it's acting, so we'll go for it. So it became a great cause for both of us.
It is acting, isn't it? Stand-up, even though it's essentially yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yes and no. It's if I spent trying to branch off. I spent 2 years studying acting, and still count myself as an actor. I've done I did a few films this last year, and I've realized that the acting craft is much more difficult than people realize. It's really, really hard. In stand-up, you just kind of amplify yourself. That's how I count it. Not that it doesn't have discipline in it, doesn't branch into an art form, but in terms of the skill and the art, acting is the hardest performing art there is, because you are playing an instrument when you act, and the instrument is the human soul and the human body. You not only have to learn your physical, breath, mental, emotional, but you have to learn how to find the soul of a character, and literally it's so hard. It's so hard. But that's why actors that are good are so wonderful to watch when you get absorbed in them.
I don't trust them.
I don't blame you, because they can fool you.
They're tricksy. Fool you, yeah.
They're tricksy.
If you're married to an actress and she starts crying, you go, "Are you just acting, or is this real?"
It's true.
Yeah. Meryl Streep? No.
True. You don't know.
Trust her. But yeah, Bill, Brent Butt said that, he says he's not a good actor, and I will agree with that, but he says that he's getting better because he does it all the time, and that the component of stand-up, which lends itself to acting, is that you always have to make it sound fresh, like you've never, these aren't words that you've memorized, right? And the best stand-ups do this, and so that's one thing that maybe you have ahead of somebody else in acting.
True. Yeah, there's a definite listening and answering between comic and audience, and that's essentially, at least for my discipline, what acting is listening and answering. I'm a huge Sanford Meisner prodigy student, and so I think that's integral in good acting. And it's also living in the moment, and that's essential in acting, is being there, acting, or being in a situation where it's the first time this has ever happened, even though you know exactly how the play turns out. There's a wonderful, my acting teacher had this wonderful example of a play that was going on in New York, and it was horrible acting, terrible acting, but there was a cat on stage that was trained to be there as part of the play, and a piece of lint fell from one of the lights and slowly came down, and the cat was watching it the whole time it came down and floated. And the critic looks around at the audience, and everyone's looking at the cat, because the cat is the only one that's in the moment. The cat is the only one who truly is experiencing and feeling something, is watching that piece of lint. And you realize that's sort of what stand-up is. If you can find someone who's really feeling and really present on stage, then it really draws the audience in, because it sounds like something. That's why people like comics who can go off the cuff and go into the audience, even though it might be canned and prepared. But if you go off into the audience and something happens in the moment, audiences frickin' love it. They go, "Oh, this is really happening. It's not prepackaged. It's actually a comic making fun of a couple on the front. I'm sure it's never happened before."
And I think George Burns' line about acting was,
Where's he working these days?
sincerity. And if you can fake that, you got it made. Something like that. I remember that from The Tonight Show. I used to watch that all the time. You did too as a kid, didn't you?
Yeah.
And watching all the stand-ups. So your old partner, Bill Hicks, how confident and opinionated was he as a child, as a teenager, or did that really take form later on?
Well, what's interesting is I was thinking about this the other day is that there was a book that he bought back in the 70s on stand-up called The Last Laugh. And I actually found it in a used bookstore the other day, and I tried reading it, but I realized that the book, even though it's about stand-up, is highly hard to read because it's very sort of critical and free-form, and it's an analytical. It's not about modern stand-up. But in the point of the book is that the stand-up comic is the guy who says, "Wait a minute." He or she. The comic is the person who doesn't go along with consensus, that questions everything in order to find that incongruity you can make fun of. And so, from the very beginning, age 13, Bill grew up, and I grew up to a probably lesser extent, with the idea that the comic was a cherished form of questioning of authority, of that's what we wanted comics for. How foolish we were in the advent of Carrot Top and others I shall not mention, that he believed the comic was the person. And so from an integral age, it was never a question in Bill's mind that the comic was not a guy who said, "Wait a minute," and pointed out incongruity and did it in a hilarious manner to get people laughing at this and going, "Isn't this ridiculous that there is a war on drugs, or that people are judgmental about pornography when we allow, pornographic images to sell Coke products and whatever." So, hypocrisy is hilarious when it's pointed out by the right, proper person.
But is there room for a Carrot Top, or just a comic who doesn't rail against something?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, look, somebody pointed out this, I don't know who it was, but comedy, everybody's their own best critic when it comes to comedy. When you go to classical music, I couldn't tell you what a good performance of a sonata is and isn't. As long as you play it, I'm like, oh, beautiful. Yeah. That Beethoven, he had it. He's going to make it someday. But with stand-up, people are all their own best critic. I know what makes me laugh. I know what it done. That guy's funny and that guy ain't. I don't like Ellen DeGeneres, but I love that Larry the Cable Guy. He make me laugh. Yeah. So it's completely subjective. Some people, I think, probably tune into someone like Bill Hicks, who, has this really, and well-deserved, legendary status, is a brilliant example of how stand-up should be done. And they probably just go, not my cup of tea.
Sure, yeah. Or they listen for certain code words, and if there's swearing or if there's certain subject matter touched on, they just shut off.
Yeah, I realize that when groups of 20-something women go out and they go to a comedy club, they don't like me. I've learned that. They like someone like Dane Cook, or they like other comics, and they will really get into them, but they just don't like me. And I don't know why, but I'm fine with it. I'm okay. But that's not my demographic. Unfortunately, what I'm learning, I don't have a demographic, because guys don't particularly like me either.
Not true. We could see your work online. I was watching some videos last night, and there's some audio content as well.
Some, yeah.
Yeah. And so I want to play for our listeners something. You have a few albums out. How recent is the most recent one?
My new CD, Evil Monkey, which is available at dwightslade.com, or you can get it through MySpace. Evil Monkey was released just a month ago.
Wow.
It's brand new. It's smoking new.
Well, we're going to play a sample of you right now. And Dwight Slade is our guest here on What's So Funny. I'm Guy McPherson, CFRO 102.7 FM. Here's Dwight Slade.
You know you're ready for a change when you don't ignore the antidepressant commercials on television. You're channel surfing, feeling blue? Yeah. Depression hurts. It really does. Maybe Mirzaprine can help. I bet it can. Possible side effects include explosive diarrhea and suicidal thoughts. I can live with that. If I had a gun, I would probably shoot this guy. The guy who can't give driving directions unless he includes useless information. When he asks him, hey, how do you get to your house? Okay, you want to get to my house? Okay, here you go. You get on 39th, right? Okay, you're going to go by the Chevron. Do you turn there? No, just go by it. Then don't bring it up. Don't bring the Chevron up. I'm not buying unleaded. Where do you live? You know where that Home Depot is? Yeah. You know that's right next to it? There's that Arby's? Yeah. Do you turn there? No, but you'll see it when you drive. Look, I'm not running errands for you. I got this one the other day. Okay, you're gonna see a water tower. Now, you're gonna feel like you went too far. Why don't we leave my feelings out of this? We don't need to gauge my emotional response to MapQuest. Okay, you're gonna see a Burger King, you're gonna feel slightly hungry, a little melancholy. You got to take handguns out of the hands of people like me who would use them constantly to thin our herd. Oh, man. If I had access to a handgun, I would pull it out like a Bic lighter at a Peter Frampton concert. I would be a self-appointed marshal of evolution, you know? I'd show up at people's houses. Ding dong! Hi, I couldn't help but notice that you're watching Dancing with the Stars. Just helping evolution out. People insert punctuation into their sentences as they're talking. You ever run into those people? Oh my God. I don't like driving at night, period. The sentence is over. Well, I'm glad you pointed that out. I had no idea we were ahead of this conversation. Can I try that? I'm going to paint my house. Semicolon. I like red.
We're with Dwight Slade. That was you speaking.
Was it?
Yeah, that was. In our heads, because it's all done through the
I
magic
know, we're
of
speaking
radio.
so eloquently about stand-up, and then it's just this guy talking about, you know what bugs me? Is the
That's what this show's about. It's all about learning. Comedy is very serious business. Oh, it's funny. Some comics are deathly dull. when
People
they're off the
overrate
stage.
this entertainment thing.
You mentioned Bill Hicks's legend. I'm just wondering what you think of his legend as opposed to what you know of him personally. You know how somebody dies young and you don't know where they would have gone had their career continued. Maybe you would have become conservative. You don't know.
You know.
But is his legend far different, or do you think it is well deserved?
I think it's well deserved. I think he would be thrilled with it. I think he is thrilled with it. I think he's amused by it, especially when you go to the UK. His status over there is if you can imagine. I mean, he's well respected in North America, and deservedly so. But outside the really comedy fans, he's mainstream. He's not particularly well known.
Still,
I think it's more than it used to.
Yeah.
But in the UK, it's ridiculous. He's a one-name celebrity. If you say Bill, everybody knows who you're talking about in the
Really?
UK. He's phenomenally popular.
with
and
the
well
masses
revered.
even.
In the masses. He's revered. And I think he would be slightly amused by that, but also pleased. He was enamored by that aspect of stand-up. So, but I do know that he had this great creative spirit, and he had so much ambition, so much he wanted to accomplish in life. And I'm sure that when he was diagnosed as being ill in 1994, that it was a great thing that he had to let go of all that, and hard for him.
Mm-hmm.
And
Hard.
Are you going to make me cry now?
No, I'm not going to.
Because my dead genius friend is gone.
It must have been.
But to answer your question, he and I we had a personal relationship, and I'm grateful for the fact that we never talked about stand-up. We never talked about the business. Whenever we were together, it was always just, we went back to being just best friends, giggling behind our hands at a school assembly. Mm-hmm. I was very grateful for that right up to the very end. It was always we just loved hanging out and making fun of the world, and it's just, I realize now when you're growing up, you think that everyone has a great friend that they connect with once in their life. But I realize now it was a very unique relationship where it's rare that you just ever love someone as much as I adored him, and I think it was returned. That you just you really love a person, and to have that as a best friend your whole life it's really wonderful. It's also tragic when you have to experience that loss.
Yeah.
But,
so that continued even after you moved away, that friendship.
Yeah. I mean, it was just we spoke each other's language. I mean, we had periods of time certainly where over the years where we became busy in different things. I had my family. Bill had his career. But it just always was like, I think we recognized in each other that there was this foundation, and the fundamentals of why we were on this planet doing this work was something we got from each other. It was a great reminder that our work was something we started together and created. And when we connected with each other, we kind of re-enamored that basis. The fact that you have to speak the truth, that you have to, what I liked about Bill was when Bill started, when he was into comedy, he was very one-liner oriented. He felt the comic just did lines into a microphone. And I felt that I was the actor, and from that we started being dynamic. And the great thing about Bill is that when you watch his stand-up, he's a brilliant writer, but he's also a brilliant performer. It's a rare combination where his material is sharp, but his performance is what sells it. He's such a wonderful performer, and
so many factors in stand-up that go into why somebody is successful, right? And all these things, and maybe the average audience member just thinks it's the jokes, but it's not always just the jokes, is it? It's like that they have to be there for sure, but someone with the same type of material might flounder or
certainly,
fail, right?
Certainly, yeah. I mean, yeah.
And we can't always even put our fingers on it. Yeah.
Right. And there's a lot because one thing is there's a lot of tricks. There's a lot of craft you can learn, and a lot of people learn it, and they're really good at it. Yeah. It's the rare performer that when they step on the stage, something changes in the room, and they have this command, and they have this relationship with the audience, and they have this truth about them, and honesty, and I've watched it. I mean, I remember working with Bill Hicks and I worked together quite a bit, and I remember going up and doing my set, and I was no slouch. I would have great sets, but as soon as Bill stepped on the stage, I could just tell the audience forgot. I mean, within 10 seconds, the audience would forget there was another comic that ever was there. He was that commanding. He had that level of charisma of a performer, and I've seen comics really draw an audience in and frickin' just abuse them with humor, just pound them.
And you guys, it sounds like you both influenced each other.
I would like to think that. I don't. It's up for people to decide. But I would like to think that Bill and I rubbed off on each other. People say, they go, "Oh, you sound like Bill." Sometimes they listen to my CDs and they go, "Oh, I can really hear Bill in your voice," and it kind of bristles me because I think, well, what are you saying, that I ripped him off? I mean, excuse me, but we were 12 when we met, and we were basically inseparable for 7 years. So yes, we share a similar voice because we stared at each other for every single day for 7 years. And so anyway, I'm happy about that. I run into other friends that we had from high school, and I can see and hear Bill in them. And one little thing from Deepak Chopra that I remember picking up was that people have the ability to metabolize memory, metabolize their own existence, that we actually, the only reason we are who we are is because we remember who we are, and we continually, on some subtle level, keep creating the same individual that we are. And that you have the ability to assimilate everything in your life. And when I talk to my friends, I can hear Bill's voice in them, and I can see Bill in them, and it's so gratifying to know that that people live on in the actual cells and the physical flesh of other people. So it's always gratifying.
Yeah, is it seeing Bill in them, or was it also reflected back that Bill was also incorporating those guys and you into himself? So you also, because I do notice friends sort of, if they hang out in groups, they all kind of talk alike. They all have their own shorthand, and stuff that makes them laugh.
Sure.
Right.
Sure. And that's one great thing about an art form when it involves, if you could compare stand-up to, say, like the Impressionist movement in France, and I'm by no means an expert in it, but I do know that they were influenced by each other.
Yeah.
That doesn't take away their individual genius. And so I think a great thing about stand-up is when you see someone who connects with you, whether it be Bill Hicks, David Tell, Brian Regan, Doug Stanhope, these people are speaking to you for a reason, and they're going to change and evolve your own act. And so I think that that's a great thing about stand-up, is that people build on each other, and if you want to really be somebody in stand-up and make a mark, you got to keep evolving. You got to keep finding out what it is. It's a process. Constantly being a process. Get it out. Get it out. Let it out. And then move on to what it's. Say goodbye. Let it go. Don't keep doing the same jokes. Although I'll be at Yuck Yuck's doing my Evil Monkey routine, which is currently available in CD form.
And you can watch it on video too on the net. The Evil Monkey routine. So who were some of your other influences comedically? Or maybe even spiritually, Deepak Chopra.
I like Deepak. I've been a meditator for many years, doing TM. So I would count Maharishi Mahesh Yogi as one of my certainly influences. Since I meditate twice a day since I was 14, I guess he would fit in that category.
I did that too. My mom was into it, and she didn't force us, but we did it as kids. It never stuck.
Yeah, I got my kids into it, and it hasn't quite stuck like I would have thought it would or liked it would. But that's interesting, though. That was a great era back in the 70s when Maharishi was on the cover of Time, and anyway. So I feel sad about it because I've gotten news that Maharishi's health is questionable, and he may pass away in the next year or so, and.
He's got to be pretty old.
Yeah.
He was pretty old in the 70s.
I know.
That's what I was
He's lived a long time and given a great deal of service. Anyway, but...
Don't go Tom Cruise on me now.
Yeah, I know, really. But the wonderful thing about something like transcendental meditation is it's a practical aspect of your life. It's not a religion or a dogma or something you have to believe in. You just do it, and it works. And it frees you to enjoy everything about life, including religions and spirituality and other people's points of view, and also, in my opinion, it's freed me to enjoy lots of different stand-up, lots of different music, and architecture and art and vibrant, and I enjoy all of life, and I count that as the practical aspect of meditation. Is it sort of clears you, gives you a basis in which to perform from. But in terms of answering your question about who influenced me in terms of stand-up, Richard Pryor was certainly an early influence, just his ability to tell the truth and also his performance aspect, his brilliant ability to take something and make it real on stage with this individual. So brilliant. And, like even someone like, probably you don't know, like a guy named Billy Braver.
No, I don't
early
know.
Comic on the Tonight Show. I've always wondered what happened to him because he was hilarious.
Really?
Great joke writer. Same thing with Ed Bluestone, early influence on Bill and I. Kelly Monteith.
He was on the Tonight Show all the time.
Kelly Monteith?
Didn't like him.
Yeah, he had like a couple of really great sets, and then he became a very bookable comedian. He was like one of the first guys in the 70s to really be a club comic that you booked.
And he made it big in England as well.
Did he?
Yeah,
I didn't
believe so.
didn't know.
He was a large influence on Brent Butt, Kelly Monteith.
All right.
Yeah, there you go.
He had that brilliant routine. Maybe that's the great thing about YouTube is you can drag up all these old things about. He had that great routine about people saying thank you. Thank you. Well, thank you. Well, that doesn't count. This isn't a conversation. We're just repeating. No, thank you. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Anyway.
So lots of various styles influenced you.
Yes, I've always been an admirer of great writing, and something that maybe it's because I need to work on that myself is to write better. But I always admired the written joke. It's so important, and I've always thought Bill Hicks had one line that I've always thought was such a brilliant line because it was so economical, so short, and yet was funny, and it told people who he was, and it had a commentary to it, and it was so economical. And the joke is, when I was growing up, all my friends say, "Hey, my dad can beat up your dad," and I'd say, "Oh yeah, when?" Yeah, and it's just like one word punchline, and it tells you something about Bill. It tells you about, and so that is so rare to find those people who can have those jokes, and to say that one of the reasons I like coming to Vancouver is because I think the Vancouver comics here have a great sense of identity here. The scene here, I know it's going under transitions, but I really love watching the Vancouver comics, and I learn so much from them because they it's so different, and it's every one of them is different, and I really learn a lot.
Is it because we're isolated? I mean, there's different theories as to why we're not under the, there's no big corporation here who's going to whisk them off to success, so they just sort of develop their own little way.
Oh, I think that's an accurate description of it.
But it is different.
It's different and singular. I think it's going under transition now. I think a lot of people have moved, and there's some, the urban well closed, and so I think that was the kind of the granddaddy of open mics. I count myself as fortunate as be able to do one set there, and so anyway, and I dated a Canadian comedian, and so which just always makes it hard to get over the border when you're coming up here frequently. And where are you coming from? Portland, Oregon. What are you up here for? See my girlfriend? Well, it's kind of a long way. Yeah. So you're doing the long distance things, huh? Yeah. How long have you been going out? 2 years. Do you love her? Hey, what is this? Are you her dad all of a sudden? Oh, Canada. We look out for each other.
Yeah. Is it hard to work in Canada as an American comic? I know it is the other way around. Is it easier for an American?
Yeah, yes and no. I think, thankfully, they prefer to book Canadian acts, and that's a lot, I think, their goal. So, and I respect that. I think that's the way it should be. So, but you have to kind of prove yourself a little bit up here if you're a U.S. comic. That you can't just come up and expect to do your joke, your show, and have everyone respond like you're their neighbor. You have to come up here and acknowledge that you're a fish out of water, and that this is that your experience should be different. Your comedy should be different than it is in the States, and so that's why I love coming up here. I mean, the joke is I love to come up to Canada because you can badmouth the U.S. and everyone agrees with you up here. There's not an inch of dissent.
You do that in the States too. Badmouth your country.
Yes, but you have to temper it and fool them into it. Your criticism has to be buried in this kind of code that they don't even know they're laughing at it. Oh yeah, we all hate America loves dancing show. Yeah, right. But you can't come out and say what freaking idiots we are.
We're talking with Dwight Slade, who's in town from Portland, Oregon, frequent-ish visitor to Vancouver. The show's What's So Funny? I'm Guy McPherson on CFRO 102.7 FM. Look at the time. We're winding down. But I wanted to ask you, Shell Oil took you away from your fledgling comedy career in Houston, Texas. You were, 16 or 18 when you had to move?
Right.
Now, this was just another move in your long adolescence. You moved around a lot, but was this the toughest one? Were there a lot of fights in the Slade household over this one?
Well, it certainly was the hardest one. For me, and for my older brother, it was hard because we spent 5 years in Houston. We had a life there, and I was an adolescent, and I went from being a child to an adolescent, and suddenly I'm moving to a small town in Oregon. It was my father's dream, so his dream was coming true, and my mother missed her family, which was in Oregon. So for them, I think it was a great homecoming. It was something they really wanted to do, but it was the hardest move for me. But in retrospect, it was certainly something that had to take place. Because, in terms of where I was in stand-up, I was in a comedy team, and my partner was obviously destined for something more than a comedy team, and that was sort of what facilitated it. And so,
What was the name of that team, by the way? Was there a name?
Bill and Dwight.
Yeah. So then you moved, and you've made Portland your home, or Oregon your home.
Mm-hmm.
Was that a wise career decision?
Well,
Normally you think of L.A.,
right.
New York, maybe Chicago.
Well, it wasn't a career decision. It was a personal decision.
Right.
And that's where my kids were born, and that's where they went to school. So I made the commitment that they would live there, that I wouldn't uproot them. And, oddly enough, most of my dreams, my creative dreams have come true being in Portland. I always told myself, well, I'm not going to move to Hollywood unless something clicks for me. And then in 2002, I did real well at Aspen, the U.S. Comedy Arts Festival, and then I got a development deal, and pretty soon I was going down to L.A. virtually every week. But I found that you could do that. You could get on a plane, an hour and a half or 2 hours later, you're in Los Angeles, and you find a cheap hotel room. And I did the math, because I was thinking about moving, and I realized it's cheaper to live in Portland, Oregon, and commute every week to Los Angeles, live in a hotel, fly home on the weekend, than it is to move there and have the same kind of life. And so, I own a house, and I have 2 children and a great home life, and I volunteer at the school, and yet I'm able to get on a plane and go to Los Angeles as often as I wish and as often as necessary. And so I don't think I've missed too much.
Yeah. And you have hot mares in Oregon.
Hot mares?
Yeah, they pose in their lingerie. Saw that on 2020 last night. There was a mare. No?
Really?
You don't know that? Oh, okay. Never
I
mind.
missed that one. What 2020 are you watching? 2020.org.
Yeah.
No.
Now, on stage, some of your best bits is when you're easily angered, and yet you seem like this really even-tempered. You volunteer at schools, you do transcendental meditation. So how much of this is faked or at least exaggerated? The feeling, there's a genuine feeling?
I try to point this out, that I am irrationally sensitive to my environment. And I think the reason is because the more you become refined in your consciousness, and you start to explore your own inner truth, that hypocrisy and incongruity become more obvious, and it builds and builds. And what people see as minor annoyances, I see as much larger cultural cancers, indications of decaying humanity. And Noam Chomsky articulated this very well, and I'm doing a poor job with it, but he basically suggesting that we're singular in our time right now because the evolution of the species, the evolution of humankind, is not necessarily assigned to those who are smart. That the idiots of the world now have this large influence on the survival of our species. And it's the first time in the history of life on the planet that the smart and the strong have not dictated evolution. That now the stupid and the arrogant and irrational have their fingers on the button because they want it there. People who believe in this dying ideology of religion now have the ability to influence the rest of the reasonable and intelligent of the world. The intelligentsia of the world are being overshadowed by this growing stupidity and this and now they have this weapon that really literally could annihilate the rest of us. And it's a fascinating time to be alive. Frightening, but it's challenging and interesting.
That is, if you believe in that evolution hocus pocus.
Exactly. To illustrate my point.
To illustrate your point. Yeah. So I just want to touch on traveling. You went to Afghanistan recently? Now, you have to separate, right? Because you obviously don't like the U.S. military going all over the world. I would assume from what you're saying.
I think, the U.S. has some trouble with their boundary issues.
And yet you go over and you play for the troops, and there's this great separation. We're not supporting the government. We're there to support the people who were sent over there. Is that
very true? Very true. I've rarely met more wonderful people than are in the armed services. And And I think that Afghanistan is sort of a forgotten linchpin in the war on terrorism. And I think that I initially supported the military action in Afghanistan. I felt that it was necessary. And plus, on a personal note, lots of Oregonians. If Oregonians go somewhere in my home state, they usually go to Afghanistan. The National Guard usually sends them to Afghanistan. So it was for my home state. It was for, and when I was over there, and it's every religious practice, every spiritual path speaks of devotion, service, and submission to a higher power. And there are rarely you meet individuals who are actively doing that. And the key word is actively. We all pay lip service to the importance of service and devotion and submission, but there rarely you actually talk to people who are doing it. And when you go over and you talk to people who are in the military, they're doing it. And it's reflected in their character. It's reflected in their eyes. It's reflected in their personality. And it's intoxicating. It is wonderful to be around people that are serving and believe. They don't even necessarily believe it. They do it. Mm-hmm. And I admire that, and I like being around people like that. So I will give as much time as I can to the military and the people that are working and serving, even though I don't particularly agree to the authority in which they're serving. I admire their service.
And it must have been an amazing experience, culturally as well. But yes. Did you have second thoughts? I mean, you have 2 kids, and here you are going to Afghanistan. And
not even for a moment.
Really?
I thought it's the least I could do.
Did your family have second thoughts?
Yeah. My ex was not real happy with that, and I went to Israel this year, and she was a little bit. Actually, I brought my kids with me to Israel. That's why she was a little bit upset.
Yeah.
But it was an opportunity to do shows in Israel, not for the military, but for a charity, and I brought my kids along for 2 weeks, and it was a great opportunity for them as well as me. But there wasn't. I never questioned it for a second. I wanted to get my feet on Afghanistan soil. I wanted to put them down halfway across the earth and feel what it was like to be there. So.
And what travels do you have coming up this year?
For those of you who are booking plans for the weekend, I'll be in Glasgow, Scotland, doing the Glasgow Comedy Festival, which is a lovely little comedy festival in Scotland. It's just it's really gained a lot of momentum over the years, and it's just a great place to go and see comedy for 3 weeks, different shows. And so I'm doing a show at Glasgow and also some London dates following that.
That's great.
Yeah, so I'm looking forward to that a lot.
Well. And coming back to Vancouver anytime soon?
I have nothing on the books, but I am always hopeful, and because Vancouverites are very, very fortunate to have a club as great as the Yuck Yucks here is.
And you didn't have to say that.
I did not.
They're not telling you to say that.
No, I didn't. I'm not a company man. I'm saying it because it's true. The owners are great there, and the manager, Matt, is really to be commended for what he's doing and with the club. So. People want to see some great comics and a great club the way it should be. I would say Yuck Yucks here in Vancouver is one of the very rare few in North America.
Well, I hope to see you back soon and have you back on the show because this was fascinating.
I loved it.
And there's so much more we could have talked about.
Yeah, we'll have to find another hour. It's a
right.
shame your iPod's going to malfunction.
Yeah, this will never air. Thanks, Dwight.
Thank you, Guy.
Our thanks to Dwight Slade for spending the hour talking with us. Good guy. Next week on this very program, Joel Walmsley will be in studio, talk about his life in comedy and performing on the streets. On the 17th, Marjorie Malpass will be here, and on the 24th, the Bob Loblaw Queer Comedy Troupe. Moving ahead to March 16th, we have Sugar Sammy live in studio. Mark that on your calendars. See you next week.